They say love has no color. But sometimes, people do. I met her at a bookstore. Not on some app. Not through friends. Just one of those rare, real-life moments that don't feel real until they're already memory. She was white. I'm black. But that wasn't the story, at least, not at first. The real story? Was how she made silence feel safe. How she listened like she'd waited her whole life to hear me. We started slow. Long walks. Shared playlists. Late-night texts that felt like therapy sessions. And for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not just looked at. Not just tolerated. But truly seen. I loved her loudly. With words, gestures, presence. She loved me quietly. With glances, comfort, and patience. Different languages. Same message. Or so I thought. We didn't talk much about race. Not directly anyway. She always said, "I don't see color. I just see you." And maybe that's where the first crack formed. Because love that can't acknowledge all of you isn't really love at all. Her family liked me, on the surface. Smiles at dinner. Awkward but polite small talk. Her mom once said, "You're so well-spoken." As if she expected something else. Her dad never looked me in the eyes for too long. Not out of hate. But out of discomfort. And when I brought it up, she said I was reading too much into things. But here's the thing. Black men don't imagine tension. We carry it. In our backs. In our voices. In our silence. Still I stayed. Because love is patience, right? Because maybe love was stronger than her blind spots. We moved in together. A small apartment with bad plumbing. And perfect light in the mornings. We fought sometimes. Mostly over small things. What show to watch? Who left the dishes? What too emotional meant. But one night, she said something I can't unhear. We were arguing. And she yelled, "Not everything is about race." I froze. Because in that moment, I wasn't her partner. I was the black guy making it about race again. And I realized she didn't really see the world I lived in. She loved me. But not all the pieces of me. That night I slept on the couch. Not because I was mad. But because I was tired. Of explaining. Of defending. Of shrinking. I wanted a love where I didn't have to translate my pain. Where "I'm tired" didn't need to become "I'm tired because I'm black, and it's exhausting to exist sometimes." Where "that joke wasn't funny" didn't need a TED Talk. But she wasn't cruel. She was kind. And that's what made it harder. Because kindness without understanding is still distance. Wrapped in a smile. A few weeks later she asked, "Do you think this is working?" And I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was complicated. Yes, I loved her. But love shouldn't feel like walking on eggshells. In your own home. I said, "I don't know." She cried. I held her. And in that embrace, I felt everything slipping. Not because of hate. Not because of betrayal. But because sometimes, two people can love each other. And still not be meant for each other. And that realization hurts more than heartbreak. Because it's not about what went wrong. It's about what was never fully right. She left the next morning to stay with a friend. No yelling. No drama. Just quiet. The same kind of quiet she used to love me with. And now, the same quiet she used to leave. I sat in our apartment. Surrounded by echoes of laughter and takeout containers. And plans we never finished. And I wondered, was love supposed to feel this confusing? Was it supposed to challenge who you are? Without compromising it? And then I realized, maybe love wasn't the problem. Maybe timing was. Maybe awareness was. Maybe we both had lessons to learn. That couldn't be learned together. I still think about her. When I pass the bookstore. When I hear that song she used to hum without knowing. But I don't regret it. Because she taught me that. Sometimes, love shows you where your wounds are. And sometimes, it's not enough to be loved. You also need to be understood. It's strange how someone can be everywhere after they've gone. The couch still held her shape for weeks. The shampoo she left behind smelled like memory. Even the silence felt different. It wasn't just an empty room. It was an echo of what we tried to be. I tried to distract myself. New podcasts, longer gym sessions, reconnecting with friends I hadn't texted back in months. But healing isn't something you schedule. It just happens in fragments. I remember the first time I saw a couple that looked like us. Black man, white woman, holding hands, laughing over iced coffee. And I felt everything. Envy, hope, a tiny sting of grief. Because from the outside, that was us. From the inside, it was more complicated. See, no one teaches you how to love across cultures. No one prepares you for the conversations you'll have to have. About hair, about language, about history, about fear. No one talks about how exhausting it is to carry your own trauma and translate it so someone else can feel comfortable enough to care. And I don't say that to blame her. I say it because it's the truth. There's this idea that love is supposed to be enough. That if you love someone hard enough, loud enough, consistently enough, the world will bend around you. But love isn't magic. It's work. It's unlearning. It's listening to stories that don't center you and not feeling threatened by them. I still remember the time we watched a documentary about redlining. She turned to me after and said, "I had no idea this even happened." And I could see it in her eyes. The confusion, the guilt, the realization that the world she walked through wasn't the same one I had to survive in. It wasn't her fault, but it was my reality. And in moments like that, I didn't need guilt. I needed her to hold space, to sit in the discomfort and not rush to clean it up. But I get it. Not everyone knows how to do that. Especially when love feels like it's supposed to be easy. She wanted us to be simple. But I've never had that luxury. I'm a black man in America. There is no simple. I come with layers. With inherited burdens. With joy carved out of resistance. And when you love me, you love all of that. Or at least you should. I think the hardest part was realizing that she didn't see any of this as real until it started affecting her. The first time someone gave us a second look in public, she laughed it off. The second time, she got quiet, uncomfortable. The third time, she asked, "Why do people care so much?" And I told her, "Because they always have. Because history leaves fingerprints on everything, even love." She didn't sign up for that wait. I know. But I didn't get to choose it either. So while she dreamed of fairy tales, I was bracing for side eyes at restaurants and awkward comments from Uber drivers. We were on the same road, but we were carrying very different bags. And eventually, those bags got too heavy for us to carry together. When she left, I didn't chase her. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew if I had to shrink to keep her, then I wasn't really being kept. I was being contained. And I promised myself a long time ago I would never dilute myself to make someone else feel whole. But let me tell you something real. I don't hate her. In fact, I thank her. She taught me what almost love looks like. She taught me what love without context feels like. Warm, but not deep enough to swim in. And that's okay. Because now, I know what I need. Not just love, but love with language, with comprehension, with someone who doesn't flinch when I talk about the weight of my skin, or the code switching I do to survive corporate meetings, or how I still feel a chill in my spine Every time I see blue and red lights flash behind me, I want a love that knows me. Even the parts one don't say out loud. A love that understands. Why I'm so protective of my peace. Why I sleep with music on. Why I get quiet when the world feels too loud. And maybe that sounds like a lot, but I've spent too many years being too little for people, just to make them comfortable. I won't do that again. A few months after the breakup, she texted me, not to get back together, just to say she was sorry. For not listening better. For not seeing the full picture. Until it was already in pieces. I didn't respond right away. Because healing doesn't always need closure. But eventually, I replied. I told her, you were good. You just weren't good for me. And that's okay. She didn't text back. And I didn't expect her to. But in that moment, I felt a kind of peace I hadn't felt in months. Not because everything made sense, but because I stopped blaming myself for someone else's blind spots. I stepped into the sunlight after that, literally and emotionally. Started writing again. Started laughing without guilt. Started dating again too. This time, more carefully. More honestly. With all my shades, not just the easy ones. And you know what? There's beauty in being whole. Even if it means waiting longer to be held. Because when the right person shows up, they won't need a translation. They'll speak the language of you fluently. Until then, I'm good. Alone doesn't mean broken. It just means I'm still growing. And maybe, just maybe, the next time love finds me, it'll come with eyes wide open. Not just for who I am, but for the world I come from. Because love without context is poetry without meaning. And I'm ready for someone who doesn't just read my story, but understands the plot. If this story touched something in you, you're not alone. Subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And stick around. Because the next one is a story about the kind of love that almost broke a man, but ended up setting him free.